Hello and welcome back to the Octave Leap Podcast. Here we are in 2024, and there has never been a better time to just get on with what you love doing. A lot of people I know were really feeling it last year. They were really kind of being dragged down through rock bottom, and me as well. You know, I went through a particularly rough patch, and I don't think we have to go through rough patches. I think rough patches just happen to us when we need to get a certain message across, when life needs to get a message across, because we're here to do something bigger than the life that we're currently animating. So I want to give you an update on the Trifecta system, because it was really born out of this difficult time. You know, I was kind of bumbling around the dark, wondering like how I got sort of sideswiped. And then when I landed on this and I identified my core wounding through Trifecta, I saw the one thing I needed to focus on. And for me, that one thing was when there are chaos in my long-term relationships, I end up experiencing limitation in my inner world, and therefore I forget what I'm supposed to do in my career and mission. And that couldn't be more true because, well, last year I ended up working more than I ever have in my life. I don't have anything to show for it, except for a few extra gray hairs on my head. I think they're here. Yeah, definitely. And definitely, you know, when I go through something like that, I have a pretty resilient style or attitude, so I can bounce back. But I do like to ask, okay, what are the lessons learned here? How can we prevent that from happening? And fortunately, this time there was gold at the end of the tunnel. I thought there was just going to be light, but there was actually a stand at the side of the road handing me out gold. And that was discovering this Trifecta system. I've been an astrologer for, 8 years and working with human design and gene keys and have kind of piecing these together. But there was a missing component, which I've talked about in other videos, called the true sidereal zodiac, which is the stars as they are in the sky, not overlain by sort of the matrix. And as a result of this, when I found out about the true sidereal zodiac, intuitively I was guided to a couple placements in my astrology chart. So using that zodiac system, which is different from the normal one, with these placements, I immediately started to get information coming through. And that's the part I knew I was onto something. Like there was just a whole shift inside. And it became very focused, and all of a sudden more information. I could see very clearly how astrology, human design, and gene keys fit together in this way, like pieces of a puzzle, to depict the influence of stars on our genetics. And it might sound funny for people, like how do the stars and planets affect our genetics? But they do, and that's something I'd invite you to discover for yourself. But once you start looking into this stuff, you'll realize that it isn't always literal information, but it's symbolic information or archetypal information that when you contemplate it, it leads to greater self-awareness and self-knowledge, which is an extremely powerful thing. Some people can get victimized by their astrology. They can get victimized by, the human design says they put themselves in a box and refuse to grow. So I do recommend that, you take this loosely and you work with this information in a way that allows you to feel more expansive in life and not, pigeonhole yourself in a particular direction. But what I've discovered with the core wounding, and when I discovered it, the first thing I wanted to do was I tried it on myself, and I'm like, holy shit, this is so true. And then I started to really think about it and contemplate how all these things showed up. And all of a sudden, within a couple weeks, the dark weather pattern I was in shifted massively. I was filled with tons of energy. And then even the biggest thing too was just the way that my income actually increased significantly without me putting much more effort out there, which was really powerful. That's a really powerful indicator that I'm tapping into sort of an attractive magnetic frequency. Not to say money means everything, but for me and what I was going through personally at that time, it really showed me that this is the way out. So then the next thing I did was I tried it for those closest to me, especially those that were kind of going through a bit of a period of introspection or a bit of a challenging period. And I remember showing it to a friend, and his wife was sitting there nodding her head. Yep, that's exactly the thing he suffers from. He didn't quite see it yet. He needed a couple days to come to terms with it, but she saw it immediately. And then after that, I'm like, well, I'm going to like try it with more people. So I tried it with more friends. And then I spread out and I said, okay, I'm going to do these donation-based readings for a little while. And I was just floored at the responses coming back. I would literally just create the chart. Sometimes they didn't even know the person. I would just create their chart using the Trifecta app. And I'd plug in the information and send it to them. And they'd be like, wow. So there was no interpretation. It's already all there. It's already all encoded, which is super cool. And so core wounding was the first module. And that's why I've been talking about it so much over the last 2 months. I feel like I went through something, but I feel like a lot of other people went through a really rough 2023. And so being able to work with that to kind of move on and get ready for what this year brings, it's very timely information. You know, there's never there's always a reason why certain things come out at certain times. And so me getting this download for those that follow me in my community and my clients and friends and family, it was my way to give back to them and to actually provide something of value for whatever's coming in 2024, which I have my own thoughts about, but I will choose not to speculate at this time. But I do feel like the months ahead require us to be clear. They require us to be resilient. They require us to be adaptable. And as a result of that, we can't be those things if we're carrying around a tired story that's been kicked half to death, that's been showing up in all sorts of resistance and negative patterns and feels like this mysterious heavy burden on our shoulders all the time. And so that's why we want to get that distortion out of the way. We want to get clear. And like I always say, it's not that we get rid of the core wound. That's never, ever the case. But instead, we want to shift the relationship with it, because that wound becomes our gift. And, you know, in some people, maybe it wasn't so much of a wound. Maybe it was just like, oh yeah, there's a couple weeks of that in childhood. And, you know, they've been mostly living this easeful life. It's just that when that relationship is off, it tends to compound more and more negative patterns. It tend to be more painful lessons and more heartbreak and more physical ailments and suffering. And we ask ourselves, what are we doing wrong? Well, we're not yet tapped into sending out the right signals to life for life to give us what we want. So when that relationship's healed and the distortion's clear, then we can actually tap into what we want. Before that, I would not recommend it. Because we run the risk of trying to, you know, ascend ourselves or get more, you know, self-develop without fully, you know, mending that relationship first can be problematic. The reason for that is because as we learn and develop, so does the shadow of our core wounding. And so if the shadow is still controlling us, it's getting more clever and sophisticated as well. You know, there's something called the enlightened ego, when people basically, they get power, they get enlightenment, they get all these things. I was just seeing this post made by this woman the other day, and I'm not judging her, but it was just like, I could very clearly see the energy behind it, you know, and she's going on about how she is this like direct conduit of God and this figurehead of transformation, and that like the people that can't handle her are all acting out of ego. And it's like, it's very clear that she's got a very strong ego, but it's just spiritualized. And yes, those kind of people have power and abilities and charm and attraction. And they've also got a really, really, really big blind spot, because there's a part of them that was being fed along with the good parts, the positive parts of them, that is now rearing its head. And, you know, we see this a lot with spiritual teachers. You know, there's people who have a direct conduit to something amazing out there, and they literally gift the world with this presence. And then at the same time, you know, you find out there's some scandal. They're embezzling money, or they're having inappropriate sexual contact with their followers or something like that. Because, you know, as you add more voltage to the system, the cracks, you're adding voltage to the cracks as well. So in my opinion, if you're aware of what is the thing causing the cracks, and, you know, I do believe there's a ringleader to the whole thing. You know, if you listen to Napoleon Hill's, what was it? I think it was Interview with the Devil or something like that. I can't remember. But great book. I listened to it on audiobook. But basically it talks about, the devil isn't this, evil thing out there. It's just sort of this aggregate of lower desires within us that wants to get fed. There's a lower order of life, the life of minerals and viruses and parasites that need to get fed. And they happen to love, negative emotions and pain and suffering. That's what they eat. Similarly, we eat sunlight and things grown with sunlight. It's probably a little bit of a burden on the sun. It's like, oh man, I've got to give down to these lower orders. But as long as they're learning the lessons and stuff. But anyway, what I'm getting at is this thing that's been identified by other traditions as a chief feature, or a primal cramp. The one thing at the beginning that caused us to veer off in this other direction. And then we compound that with myriads of other smaller challenges and problems, and it becomes sort of like a Arctic wildfire, where a fire will pop up here, and a fire will pop up here, and a fire will pop up here, but it's actually traveling through the root system. So that's why, I feel like that's the thing people should do first. It requires a bit of life experience to really identify it. And it's interesting because some people will get it immediately and it will just strike to their being, and they'll just get the core wounding. And then other people are kind of scratching their heads, and it takes them a little bit longer to contemplate what that could mean. So everybody's kind of at a different point. And I would say for some people, this is a little bit more of an intermediate or advanced kind of concept. It's not the first thing. If you're just beginning to wake up to some form of listening to yourself and not just referencing based on external conditions all the time, this is probably not going to you're probably not even watching this video. You're probably just oh, okay, there's a guy on the screen, but I don't hear what he's actually talking about. Because this concept here, it requires that we've tried out a few things. It's a little bit more advanced, but the gift is it doesn't take long. If you're ready for the shift, you tune in, you make the shift. So that's the beauty of the core wounding. And once, like I said, we work with that, and we begin to understand that there's this relationship that just needs to be continuously harmonized and kept in balance, we can get on with what we're here to do. No more healing loops, no more spending years in Bali. I lived in Bali, and some people, that's their vocation, is being on a healing loop. Just heal and process and integrate and exclude the people in their lives because it's so internally focused. And for me, it's either they're not able to process something fully, or their approach is rather is not working for them, or actually they're sort of self-absorbed and they truly love that state of being because it's so familiar for them. But it's not healthy, especially nowadays. We've got to get on with things. We've got to go out there and have some sort of role in bringing in the new. I mean, it's definitely not about staying attached to the old. So bringing in the new, the easiest way to do that, and I think the best way and the way that I would certainly recommend to anyone, is hooking into that ideal reality of where we want to be. And when that core wounding relationship isn't creating distortion or distraction in the way, we can actually do that fairly clearly, and we can actually see what that life is like. Then I invite you to walk through a day in that life and really kind of feel your way through it, and notice that version of you, it's not in the future, it's in a different parallel reality living, this ideal version of you. What are they doing? What kind of behavior do they have? And if you want to become like that, which I think most people probably do want to become their ideal self, start to model that behavior. Start to act like that person would. If that person's living a life in a natural setting and it's an easeful, breezy, life with lots of stillness, then why are you overworking yourself to get there? I'm saying that to myself because that's one thing I figured out. It's oh yeah, I need to actually lay off the work to get to this place that I want to be. We don't get to our destination by veering off here. We get to the destination by knowing what it is and going straight towards it. And it isn't it's something to attain. It's basically already happening. It's already present. We just simply need to attune with it. My mentor once said, the kingdom of heaven is merely a hair's breadth away. And that hair's breadth is of frequency. So if we take a slightly different shift and we tame those tiny places within us, we can realize that we're very close to that world of that we want to be in. It's not far away. It's just that everything is so ingrained and conditioned into doing things the way that it's always been doing things. So yeah, it's not that far away physically. It's an internal state of being. And often when I work with people, I know that they're on a path that's going to generate tremendous amounts of momentum when the feeling that they have of completing whatever it is they seek to do, they feel that at every single step along the way. That's how you know you're actually on a path that's going to lead you to, your wildest dreams. And your wildest dreams are never a linear path. They're always an exponential path. So you're constantly stretching your capacity for what you believe is possible. And that's the tricky part, because sometimes that means stepping out of, gender norms, cultural norms, family traditions, what your circle of friends and peers want to do. It's really redefining things radically sometimes. And so when we're hooked into our ideal reality and we start acting like that and becoming like that, the only thing we can do is pull the handbrake up at times when a certain part of us isn't ready to let go. And that might temporarily set us back, sometimes for a couple of days, sometimes for a lifetime. Yeah, both are completely valid. But basically, we get there at the speed in which we're ready to let go all of our self-defining beliefs and sometimes even shifting the axiom beneath that belief. The axiom being the bedrock upon which all other beliefs form. And this is largely rooted in the subconscious mind. Once we're tapped into that, it becomes very easy to actually get the things we want. Because I guarantee you, if you really dig beneath the surface, there's a lot of people out there that say they want money, for instance. And you ask them, would you like $100,000? And almost everyone goes, yes, I would like $100,000. But that's not really, like, your heart can't quantify $100,000. It doesn't give a shit about it. So that's why they don't get it by wanting it, because it isn't actually their big calling. It has nothing to do with that. So the only part of that is this facet of their mind that's sort of wrapped up in this artificial system of finance and money and all of these things that cares about that. But the part of them that really matters, the relationships, the heart, the having a purposeful impact in the world, it does care less about that. So what I say is that, when the heart's on board and when you're tapped into that ideal reality and you've cleared the distortion of your core wounding out of the way, then there's little things you can do, and everybody's got slightly different way to do it. So it's kind of like navigating a fine line of alignment. You're sort of doing the precise adjustments at this point. But these precise adjustments, one little adjustment leads to big results. So you turn the dial a bit and you begin to amplify the new opportunities flowing into your life to make that shift happen materially faster. So phase 1 was about clearing. Phase 2 was more about getting into the direction or the vision of where you want to go. And stage 3 is basically just turning up the dial and making it happen in the most direct way. So that's really the basis of Trifecta. And the good news is, I tend to follow this approach of, identify, give space, and shift. And so the first one, identify, knowing. That's what Trifecta does. The report allows you to identify these things. 2, giving space, contemplating, but thinking about it, thinking about how these things have shown up in your life. And then 3 is actually taking actions in life that will make them happen. Very, very simple process. And it yields massive results. I haven't actually seen anything like it. And I'm very excited to be working with more therapists and healers and providing the system when I get the web application up. Right now, I was offering it manually, so you can give me a donation and I'll prepare your report for you. It takes me about 40 minutes to prepare a Trifecta report, but very useful. In the future, this will be automated. It'll be available on the web, and you can just go to a website and get it done, because I really think this is going to be something that really supports people in awakening to what they're here to do and getting rid of the resistance and the distortion that prevents them from doing it. What I am offering, though, and this is really where the potency is a 3-month Trifecta container. So that's where we take each of these steps, which is, addressing the core wound, aligning with natural prosperity, identifying your life's work, aligning with natural prosperity. We do each of these 3 steps for that. So we identify, that's where we use the system for each individual. we give space. So there's different processes to actually open the space. And then there's another process to activate. And this, when I've worked with this with individual clients, it's yielded massive results. It's like a permanent change. It's like now you literally walked in as one person, you come out really much more potent and able to magnetize what you need, have a clear vision of what you're here to do, and not be dragging around that burden. So what is that worth? It's difficult to quantify that, but especially because it's difficult to realize how drastic this shift can be. But I want you to just take a moment now and just think about, what would my ideal self look like? What would I be doing? What would I feel like on a daily basis? Who would I be around? Where would I be? And then ask yourself how much you're trying to spend time and money getting to that place right now, and it's not working, versus just basically becoming that in a short period of time. It's difficult to quantify transformation, but anyway, if you're feeling the call, it's not much time before this container starts, because it's starting in about a week from the release of this video. But if you hear this now and you're interested, I can still let you in. You just need to get on a call with me. So my link to book a call is below. I've got a couple spots left, not many. And after that, I'll be putting out more. This is my life's work, is to publish this and to raise awareness about this system. And I don't even want to claim it's mine, because it's an aggregate of 4 other things kind of skillfully pieced together, I guess. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. I've got plenty of other resources already created and coming along regarding Trifecta. So hopefully I'll hear from you on a call. But if not, take care. And I'll be back next week with another awesome podcast. See you later.